Oh no, he's all right. He's all right. Leave him go.
But the mention, Johnny, in your final bit about the tears, that really evoked curiosity in me as well. I wonder what's going on there. So psychologically, I might be sitting stationary, but psychologically, I'm leaning in now because I want to hear more from the story. So if you've got your opening line, you're drawing people in a way. You've done the heavy lifting, a key bit of the heavy lifting, just with that opening line. Now, I got the bonus because I was speaking to Johnny a bit earlier, and I got the treat of hearing that opening line over the phone before I came on the call. So I was looking forward to hearing it again. Now we've got Paul just joining us, so we're fully lined up. Right. Thank you, Johnny. Have we got another person now ready to go with their opening line?
Could we just hear Johnny's one? Would you give it to us quickly, Johnny, just because in the flavour?
Sure. Grafton Street, a phone box. Click, the coin drops. Minutes later, tears of joy.
It's like a poem in itself.
Johnny, would you be open to one idea that might even bring that up another bit?
Yeah.
So as I listen to you, with each piece of what you say, I'd love just a little bit longer to let that settle before the next bit. So the one thing I'd suggest to you is the pacing. If you could just leave a bit of breathing space, because each bit of what you've said is richly evocative. That's the only thing I would say on that opening line.
Yeah. But picking up on the other one I had earlier as well, I think that I have brought in a few of the senses. It would be nice to have something that just describes either touch or smell as well, you know, in some way. But yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Yeah, that was the only thing I'd say, because funny enough with that one, as Nicky said about it bringing you back, just the image of the phone box. For any of us who've used phone boxes back in the day for important calls, you're kind of going back to that zone, and now just dying to hear, so what was going on in your particular story? But we're all back there. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Johnny. So, have we another?
Thank you very much for all listening.
And you know, that is the other important thing. We talked earlier on that if you're thinking a story at its simplest level, there's going to be three things going on in play. There's going to be the teller, there's going to be the story, and of course, there's not much point in any of that without the listener. So the good quality listening, and then it's the interaction that goes on between the three, because the story's a living thing. You won't tell it the same way every time. You'll be different, and the listeners will give you energy that you'll feed off. So all of those elements are in play. So we might take another 2 or 3 opening lines if you're up for just offering them, and let's just see how they land. And we'll do the same thing when you've spoken your opening line. Let's just leave a few moments for the line to land, and then there'll be a chance for people to share what that evoked in them if the person is open to hearing that. So have we got another volunteer? Yes, Nicky, good man.
I go?
Yeah.
Okay. I have this innate feeling that no matter what I do or achieve, that there's a slight pressure not to let my father down. It doesn't overwhelm me, it doesn't drive me, but it just sits there. And I'm wondering, is it something that every son has to live with?
What's most personal is most general.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lovely way of putting it. Lovely way of putting it. Really, really nice.
Cheers, gentlemen. Cheers.
Any other reflections on hearing that from Nicky?
Well, there's a resonance of my own situation, my own story, but I love the sense of the innate feeling in the first sentence, but the perplexity or the confusion at not sure what the feeling is. You know, it doesn't drive me. It doesn't. I don't know what the second one was, but that in a funny way makes sense. But it's a nice juxtaposition. So this is sort of an innate feeling, but then actually not sure. There's almost like a vacuum in the feeling you're trying to describe it, and I think that's a nice polarity you would have spoken about, Peter, before.
Yeah.
To kind of set up the.
Do you find that his line evokes curiosity in you?
Yes, and I kind of felt there was a huge sense of someone feeling inadequate, and I wasn't sure why they would. So I was dying to hear a bit more to kind of it made you want to comfort on the one hand, and on the other hand, it made you want to just hear it. Yeah.
The feeling it brought up in me, Nicky, was that this is something that you've thought about and contemplated for a long time, and the story that you were going to bring us on, I wasn't necessarily expecting a conclusion. I was expecting for you to tell us your journey of contemplation and figuring that all out. And I didn't think there would be a definite ending. Whereas with Johnny's story, I had a feeling it was a story that happened, that was done, that had a definite ending. But yours was almost like, it's your life, you're really living it now. That was just the way it landed with me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, just to touch on Mel's point, it's not really a feeling of inadequacy, because I don't feel inadequate, but there's just this certain thing, and it's more probably the story, but there's certain times that I feel like I've failed my dad, and like one or two times, like in this story anyway, but not necessarily that I'm inadequate. But I know what you mean for this story probably, but once you hear the rest of it, you'll kind of see that it's not, that's not the main kind of theme. The main theme is probably confusion about why, for that moment, did I feel inadequate? That makes sense.
And even that interaction, Nicky, between yourself and Mel is really interesting, because it illustrates something, that when you begin your story, how your story lands will be different with every listener. And it will trigger things that they're carrying that are coming up for them. And in this case here, Mel's mad curious to know about this particular angle, but she's going to be brought on a journey by you as you share the story with us later on. And she'll quite likely get to resolve that question. She may be left with others. Part of the world of story. We'll bring each other on journeys. So thank you, Nicky. Great to hear.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Now, we've got one more volunteer for an opening line.
One then.
Okay, because I'm nervous, so I might as well do this and get it over with.
Isn't it nice to be volunteered by Ian? It's great to have a fella like that in the group, isn't it?
Okay. So 93 minutes after my husband kissed me goodbye and heading for the train to work, I find myself in Beaumont Hospital, and I'm cutting across this doctor's fumbling words. Is he alive? No. Can you take his organs? No. Can you take his eyes? No. I thought you could take the eyes for up to 12 hours. No.
Now, Mel, are you open to hearing some reflections as to what
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
evoking? Yeah, okay. So
I heard this last week, and I could hear it again and again and again. I just think it's just so wonderfully phrased and crafted, and I know where some of it leads as well, which is really, really lovely. But even that opening piece, even if you broke down the initial half of it, is just lovely. And I think probably you slightly rushed it just as you were going along it. You had the pacing really, really lovely at the start, and then you sort of rushed it as you were going along. I don't know, maybe it was all the big eyes staring at you or something. We should have switched our video off. Anyway, I think it's beautiful.
Thank you.
And obviously tells a very sad story with it as well. But
Thank you.
yeah.
Amazing. I thought it was amazing.
For me, it kind of evokes. There are different ways of grabbing attention, and the variety of those is one of the wonders of life. But one of those is like, it's almost like an explosion. I mean, the precision of 93 minutes. It's like, what the hell is coming next? What's the next word? Never mind the next sentence. 93 minutes later, and you go from the kiss with your husband to clearly he has passed on. And there's this, so I mean, for me, it's like getting on a roller coaster, and before they announce it's taken off, boom, you're gone. So for me, it's like, I'm all ears, I'm here kind of thing. So that was.
I would say, Mel, I'm the same. It's like that roller coaster. Half of me really wants to hear the story. The other half doesn't really want to hear the story. So it's just, yeah, it's intriguing.
Mel, I'm curious, when you were sharing the line with us, how were you feeling?
I was quite nervous about this because I had started, I had thought I could write stuff, and then I was quite nervous of speaking it. Yeah, so, and I was nervous about how, and like, I find that really interesting that, yeah, it sounds like a story you wouldn't want to hear, when actually, in reality, my whole point is that couples don't die together and that death is absolutely fine. But you don't get that with the initial opening sentence, And the precision of the time, Tomas, it's unbelievable how actually that time was absolutely, it was being measured as the situation was evolving, as that chase after the ambulance into the hospital and whatever, that time was being measured. So that was really interesting that, yeah.
Yeah, for me, and apologies guys for being late. The 93 minutes, when I just heard that, it was like, holy shit, this is something really impactful, really profound, life-changing, earth-shattering. Just holy shit, this is something big coming. So straight away I was just like, wow, what's going to follow?
It's a brilliant example to me, Mel, of how, in that case, the 93 minutes, just that detail is such a big deal because of the overall context that you're painting. So it's brilliant. Like, if you'd have said an hour and a half later, it wouldn't have had the same impact. 93 minutes. So these are the little bits when we're really working on our story. You could just drop in one or two details and they're absolutely going to hook people. Now, you could put a whole load of padding around that and say it's 93 minutes, and I was amazed myself. And then you're draining the impact out of it. You just drop in the detail and you let it do its work. And I'm interested, Mel, that you acknowledged that you were nervous before you started. And when I asked you then, how did you feel sharing the line? You said again that you were a bit nervous. And I would go with, are you open to an observation about the delivery? So I would echo what Johnny said about the pace. I think there is such impact in that opening that you slowing yourself down a little gives you a chance to breathe in it, and it gives us as listeners a chance to breathe with it. So that would be
Okay.
one thing. And the other thing is, I'm guessing this was because of the nervous feeling you had. You smiled as you finished it out.
Yes, total nervousness.
Yeah, so which when you really do the work, and this comes back to something I know Ian has been asking me questions about, which is all about how do we carry our stories. Now, I've had the good fortune of having a one-to-one chat with you, and I've also got to meet you a number of times on Press Pause. So you have referred to this story a few times without telling the whole story. And each time you've done it, I've been struck by the ease with which you've done it. And so to me, it's striking that today there's a different energy in you when you go to share the story.
Yes, and a big part of it is that, you know, and I know we said it wasn't going to be a lead balloon or whatever, but I do kind of feel, oh gosh, it's a very heavy thing to lay out there. And I'm kind of nearly trying to reassure people, this is all right, I'm going to be all right, you know, I'm not going to...
And you see, so the thing there, Mel, that might be worth considering, look, we've got more chance to do more with this, in the way that you carry yourself, in the way that you embody the story, you give the reassurance to the listeners, she's okay.
Okay.
Whereas if any of us show up to tell a story that we're still rattled by, and we exude that, now the listeners have a problem, because on the one hand, they might be curious about the story, but now they're getting concerned about the teller.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never felt concern for you on Press Pause, not because I don't care, but because you haven't given me reason to.
Yeah. Okay. That's really helpful.
And like you've talked to me before about, and you've said it on these calls as well, about that maybe this story might be of help to others, whether you choose to write it or to tell it. If you choose to tell it, it will be of more help to others when you carry it in a way that enables that to happen.
Okay.
Making sense?
Yes, I'm there.
Thank you for the opening line. I mean, Jesus, this is
powerful.
It's powerful stuff, yeah.
Really powerful. Yeah, gets the heart.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's real heart-opening stuff, which to me is key element to what story is. And in doing it, we get to know ourselves better. We just become more aware, more conscious of how we're going about our day-to-day lives, because we dare to lean into our own story. Like, we're all devils for reading books, but there's epic books in us. And that's what story work is about for me, delving in there.
So some more than others, Pete.
Indeed, Ian, indeed. Yes. So I'm conscious of time. Johnny, I know, needs to go at 4 o'clock. So what I'd love to think we can manage, do each of you reckon you've got a story that you can tell in 4 to 5 minutes? Yeah. So I'd suggest let's just sit back and bask in Storyland for the next hour and a half and treat ourselves to the open-hearted generosity of each person on this call. And let's see where it brings us. You up for that?
Yeah.
So Johnny, given that you're going at 4, if you're up for it, I'd suggest you might lead us off.
Ooh, we're not breaking into threes. We're staying in our 9.
That's my suggestion, because
okay,
I think we can really get the maximum value of treating each other. And if people are struggling with that, we can work something different. But that was my hope, that we would just stay as a group today, bathe in the stories.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Over to you,
as
Johnny.
they say, the floor is mine, is it?
The floor is yours. And what you're doing there is important. So I'll just say this while you're doing it. When your turn comes to take the story, do take a moment or two to just ground and center yourself, and then give us the gift of your opening line and the follow-on gift of your story. So over to you, Johnny.
Lovely. And Ian Kingston's on mute, is he?
He's not at the minute, but he's got the fingers going.
Ian's doing tech support, as always.
Okay. Grafton Street, a phone box. Click. The coin drops. Minutes later, tears of joy. There was a lot in that call, and it has framed a lifetime of beginnings and endings and suppressed emotion. 26 years ago, I jumped on a train from my home in Malahide, and at about lunchtime, I had a call to make. I wasn't sure where I was going to make the call, but I knew, and I was feeling a little bit anxious about it. So anyway, went into town, and around the time that the call had to be made, I don't exactly remember what time it was, I found a phone box at the end of Grafton Street, went in, dialed the number, click, the coin dropped, and a girl answered the phone, and I asked if I could speak to Jim. I was asked to hold on for a moment or two, and then Jim came on, and he was delighted to be able to tell me that I had got my first job on the Management Development Program in Barclays Bank. I could barely speak. I was so excited, and I was so happy, and I knew my dad would be proud of me, and my mum would be proud of me, and I didn't know where to turn. I could barely even thank him before putting the phone down. And then the very next person that I called, and I'm not even quite sure why, was my girlfriend, because I wanted to tell her that I had gotten the job. And I was crying when I called her. So it had just caused a massive well of emotion. And that is my story.
Good man, Johnny. Thank you.
And I think the only piece that, if I just reflect on it, that's missing for me is just how I bridged to that line about the lifetime of suppressed emotion. Because I think, and I was sharing it with the group, what's been really interesting about doing this over the 4 weeks is I have a load of little stories in my head now that I want to craft and write out that all join together. But emotion and my response to them and beginnings and endings is a massive part of it.
I mean, they're big themes that you're raising, Johnny, and you're reminding me of a colleague of mine many years ago who was explaining the challenge of going home from a very intense 3 days of work. And he said that it's very important to be able to say hello well and say goodbye well. And I think that's relevant to what you're talking about there, that we need to be say goodbye and let things go well so that we can actually cleanly say hello to what's coming next. What do you reckon would help you to make that bridge that you referred to?
Which bridge is that?
You talked there about the bridge, and I think you talked about suppressed emotions. What would help you to make that bridge?
Thousands of hours of therapy.
That's one route. Are there any others?
And are you not getting it on a Friday?
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I am, yeah.
Johnny, I'd love to ask, why were you surprised that you called your girlfriend first? Were you not going out with her very long, or did you end up with her?
No. Because I like, you know, it's an interesting thing with a very complicated relationship that I have with my mum. So my dad died when I was 14, and I was eldest boy, and that leads to all sorts of challenges and things as well, you know, just I suppose in terms of the emotional relationship. But you would have thought really that the first person you'd call might be, and I don't even think I called her. I waited till I got home to tell her.
Love it.
How are you feeling now, having shared the story with us, Johnny?
Oh, it's really good. Well, actually, my happiest moment was when this morning when I was sitting down and I landed on my opening line. I was delighted with myself with that. I know. Yeah, and my mini narcissistic moment of, "Ooh, isn't that nice?"
Well, it is damn satisfying to nail your opening line. It's one of the key moments in a story.
Yeah, well, I just really, and it's interesting because even with in listening to Nikki's and Mel's as well, you just don't need to say any more than those opening lines, and I could perfectly happily drift off with each of them and decide what the ending was. You know, now innate curiosity means you want to go and ask more.
Yeah.
But they're lovely, and even though they're completely different people and we've never met face to face, and I have experiences that tie to both of those. So that's the other beautiful thing about it.
Yeah. Well, as you said there earlier on, Johnny, that which is most personal is most general. So when we really start opening our hearts and sharing some of the formative experiences, the likelihood is they're going to resonate big time with other people. Just the human journey.
Yeah, but I just even doing this over the last 4 weeks, just the quality of how I will think about how I would articulate anything, even if it, you know, it's caused me to just even be careful in sending a couple of texts over the last few weeks, just because of just how am I feeling, how is that going to resonate, just using the words, and you know, I nearly sent one today to two of the guys on my team, because they're about to have a reporting line change, and it's a bit of a stressor for them. And I just nearly sent some, and I got on very well with them. But it was just good because I took a breath and went, no, actually, no need for that, and a much better outcome. So it was nice, you know.
Good. And I think you know, it was one of the things I've been thoughtful about over these sessions. That's what you're touching on there, Johnny, is the idea of the living story. So you were making judgments today, and maybe you made some different choices because you were getting a bit more thoughtful about communication and how it might land with people. So that's, to me, another spin-off of this. When you start really looking at what's impacted you, it will prompt you to be a bit more thoughtful about how you communicate out with other people. And you know, you've talked about using your own personal story and your adventures the last couple of years, Johnny, and maybe sharing that more broadly. You've got a potentially powerful story, or maybe a number of stories to share that could be very helpful to other people if you choose to do that. So thank you, Johnny, for sharing that.
Peter, I was just going to say to Johnny that
Nikki, yeah,
I just felt the overwhelming experience of Johnny's story was the less is more, and it really left me curious to say, like, why did you feel so emotional when you got the job, and just to definitely want to find out more. So I think, yeah, there is 5 or 6 stories around that.
Yeah.
And like the interesting thing is, you know, you only draw the threads of connection, and like, quite honestly, until I came into this group, I'd never ever thought about that. I can quite honestly say ever, until I sat thinking, shit, I haven't done anything, and I'm sitting in front of Ian Kingston, and I've got to tell a story. You know, it was just like,
and you know that he has all his homework done.
yeah, or he gives off the air of it anyway. Yeah, so that's really intriguing, and it joins. I have 5 or 6 other ones that immediately I could give you a couple of lines that weave together as well. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think on Friday's Press Pause, I drew on Shane Kenny's line from previous, which I loved, which is, we've got the opportunity to wander with wonder along the paths of our own lives. And that's what the world of story gives us a chance to do. And maybe, Johnny, that's something you may choose to do. And if you choose to come along for the additional 4 sessions, maybe you'll choose to pick one of those stories and use it as an opportunity to do a bit of crafting on that. So thank you again.
Thank you all for listening. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So what about a second person now to treat us to their story?
Okay,
Good on you,
I'll
Miriam.
go first. Yeah.
Good on you.
Okay. October 2017. My story is how vertigo stopped me in my tracks and led me to the magic of storytelling. So when I look back now on the few years leading up to 2017, I can very clearly see that I had an awful lot of personal and professional stress. Back then, however, it was a little bit different. I didn't really see things as clearly. And I was juggling and running and going and going. And then one day in October of that year, I hit a wall. Went to the doctor and I was diagnosed with vertigo. She gave me medication and a couple of weeks off work. And to say that I couldn't lift my head off the couch or the bed for more than 10 minutes is honestly the truth. I'd never experienced anything like it. It was waves of nauseousness that just made me want to lie down all the time. And now I see that perhaps this experience of vertigo was actually a really big gift, because first of all, it stopped me and caused me to pause on my life journey. The thing about the medication that the doctor gave me was it really didn't work. And even though I took it for 10 days, 12 days, 14 days, I just wasn't feeling any better. And one day, very randomly on the phone, my mom said to me, have you ever thought of going to a cranial sacral therapist? Or it could even be a sacred cranial therapist, I'm not too sure. And I'd heard about that therapy before, but didn't know anything about it and didn't know anybody that knew anything about it. So I took up the iPad and I did a bit of Googling. And this website popped up, don't ask me why, I clicked into it, and there was a photograph of a lady called Gillian. And just instinctively, not a head thing, more of a good thing, I had a feeling about her. Contacted her and made an appointment. A few evenings later, I'm in her therapy room lying on the plinth, and I just really don't want to talk. I don't want to talk. I just want her to work her magic and make me feel better. So it was a quiet 60 or 80 minutes, I don't even remember. But the following week, when I came back for a second visit, I felt a little bit more like myself. So I asked her, just randomly, how did you become a cranial sacral therapist? And I don't even think that's the right title of what she does. So she started to tell me her story. So I'm lying on the plinth, eyes closed, and I'm listening. And I'm actually visualizing the story that she's telling me in pictures. And it was a really heartwarming, soul-nourishing, happy story. I'm silent, I'm the listener, I'm taking it all in. And at the end of it, I said, Gillian, that was such a happy story. And she real casually says to me, well, maybe you're just not around the right stories these days, Miriam. And she said to me, have you ever heard of a storytelling group? And I said, well, I know there's a lady in Dalkey that opens her house to the Americans that stay in Killiney Castle Hotel, but apart from that, no. And she said, I have a pal and he has a storytelling group, but it's a closed group. You have to be invited. I said, okay. Didn't expect to hear the next sentence, which was, I'll contact him and ask him, can you come along? I was delighted, felt much better in myself. And the therapy definitely helped me on my way. And the next day, I got a lovely email inviting me to storytelling about 2 or 3 weeks later in a house up in Leopardstown. So I went back to work, feeling back to myself again. Before I knew it, the Friday night came. Now, it was a November evening, the end of November, kind of a foggy, dark night. Got ready. Wasn't really thinking too deeply about this whole storytelling. Drove the car up, parked, found the house, walked down the driveway, and just as I'm about to knock on the door, I stopped and I thought, I do not know this person. I have no idea what's going on behind these doors. What do storytellers do? Are they swingers? Are they into all sorts of funny things that perhaps I'm not involved in? like, I don't even know Gillian, like Jesus. And I started to feel a little bit nervous. I turned around and I glanced into the lawn, and there appeared to me to be a labyrinth, which for those, I'd heard of a labyrinth before. It's kind of a walking circle for mindfulness. And I took that as a little bit of a positive sign for the universe. So I knocked on the door, and the door opened to this smiley, happy man called Peter. Never met him before, but next thing I'm in his house, in his kitchen with a wonderful group of people. And I spent the next 2.5 hours in his living room around the fireplace, just listening to people telling their story from the heart, with truth and with honesty. And I was like a sponge. I was absolutely mesmerized. And that was my first introduction to storytelling. And when I reflect about that journey, it leads me to remember and to remind myself that sometimes when something bad happens to you, like the vertigo, something really good can come out of it if you have a little bit of courage and if you follow the signs. And you can be led to a whole new wonderful world, a new hobby, and some new friends. Thank you, Peter.
Wow.
God, I'm glad that's done. It's
How are you
nerve-wracking,
feeling now,
guys.
Miriam?
You know, I have the same experience a lot when I go to talk. I find a kind of a flow happens, and as long as I don't think about it, I'm grand. That's why I couldn't really look at the screen to look at you guys too much, because I get distracted, and once I get distracted, I lose my flow, you know. But I don't even know if it's a good story, but it felt like a really good story to me. And vertigo led me to storytelling.
Great. So are you open to hearing some reflections, Miriam, as to what it might have evoked, to how it landed with others? Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
So over to you guys.
I had the pleasure of I had the pleasure of hearing this story last week, and I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thought you delivered it. I actually think it was even better today, Miriam. The heart, the feeling was just all there. So I just loved it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
I love the reflection at the end in particular. I just thought it was a lovely way of drawing it all together and not knowing where it was going to go. I never heard of a cranial sacred therapist.
Sacral therapist.
Yeah, sacral therapist. Yeah, sorry. So kind of, but the cranial itself as a word is a great word.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing, the narrative you're telling yourself and the stories you're immersing yourself in. So it's layer upon layer. But like Johnny's story for me was an opening out of a very delicate flower, you know, layer upon layer. Yours is kind of invading layer by layer, you know, from your vertigo to this weird thing I've never heard of before, the cranial therapist. And then into the story, which of course makes sense when you're at the end of it. For all of us, we were here for that reason, probably in different ways. And then the microcosm of the journey, the physical journey from your house to Peter's house. And I remember that I didn't have the privilege of Paul hearing the story for the first time last week, but I did hear the image. Remember that week?
Yes, I remember. Yes.
So
yeah.
So you clearly developed it further. I remember that much. It is more developed now, which is great. But yeah, so that's not my own thoughts.
Thank you. Thanks, Tomas. Appreciate it. Was it a bit too mushy, guys?
Totally. Absolutely. That's what was
that's what was bothering you.
No, and I tell you, if you asked me to sum it up, I would have said heartfelt and vulnerable were the two words that came to me. So the language I thought was just simple and beautiful, but you just knew it was coming from you, coming from a place of just pure love, is how I felt listening to it. So well done.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Thanks very much. Thank you, guys.
I thought it was the lovely simplicity in it, except for one thing. I was really surprised how you managed to say that really beautiful, even kind of a tone and pace. Even when you were talking about the swingers, you've managed to show no disappointment. Very accomplished.
Very accomplished.
Should have
Yeah.
Mel
There's
a
a second
sense
story
of,
there.
sense of
Yeah, there
familiarity
is.
there.
Oh, God. Oh, you caught me out, guys. No, no. Thanks, Mel. Thank you.
Miriam,
To give you one other comment, Miriam, Tomas mentioned that he loved the reflection. So if you think back to that simple story structure that I would have shared, where you have to set the scene or the context, then you tell the story, then you share the reflection at the end. So what is it you learned, or how was your perspective shifted? You really clearly nailed that. And I loved this message that good can come out of it. And then you had these two elements. One was the courage, and the other one was if you see the signs or read the signs. So that's a message, you know, as a listener, I could take away then, and I could apply it in loads of different places. So I really, really like that. And I suppose it's a bit comical for me because the story is about you arriving at my house, but
Yeah.
this image you had of standing at the front door, and then the heebie-jeebies starting to come in and wondering what the hell am I doing, and then just seeing this thing on the lawn and
Yeah.
just give you enough of a nudge to go ahead and go into the
Yeah.
house. I really liked that moment in the story.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Sorry, was somebody else going to say something there when I started speaking? Nicky.
Yeah, Miriam, I was just going to say, I love one of the themes of the facing your fears, because I think it's something we all do. Like, I even think when I signed up for this course, I got the email and I said, wow, it sounds really interesting, but who the hell else is going to be on it?
Yeah.
And you know, press the button, you see all these faces. And
Yes.
I just think it's something everyone faces. So, and you kind of faced it twice by going to Gillian, and then also by
Yes.
going the next step again. And, you know, and it's just a
Yes.
great kind of positive outlook in life to kind of face your fears like that.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Miriam, could I ask, you know, and I loved your story and I thought you told it brilliantly, and I loved the calm pace throughout it. And if I'm reflecting on the sessions over the last few weeks, you know, I could see there was emotion, there was dips, you know, there was a bit of tension. But I was really interested in the vertigo, you know, like
Yeah.
did the storytelling help?
No, I don't think the storytelling helped the vertigo. I think Gillian solved the vertigo, you know what I mean? And I suppose by going to her and not being able to speak, you know, like if she had have asked me any questions, I was really, the first time I didn't even want her to speak. The second time when she talked, it was like as if because I'm very visual, so I could see everything that she was telling me. And my comment was, it's such a lovely story. And she was taken aback by the fact that I seemed surprised at a lovely story. Do you know what I mean? But actually looking back in my life then, I just had so much crap going on that actually on that plinth, it was a lovely moment. Yeah. But I'm sure Peter's house and his fire and the storytelling helped the vertigo, didn't it, Peter?
Oh, indeed. Should we lay claim to that anyway, Miriam? Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I wonder, Pete, as well, I don't know, but, you know, and because the story is so powerful, I know storytelling didn't cure the vertigo, but I wonder there could be an even more of a powerful emotional lift through the thing, you know, that idea of stories. And, you know, because there was that moment in the story where I heard something as a result of the vertigo, and, you know, it did help. I don't know.
I'm the same as you, Dave. I was hearing that the swinging was probably the thing that...
No, that's not the same as me. That's entirely down to you.
Yeah. Well, I went to all kinds of places on that, and I was thinking, what kind of swinging went on that would cure the vertigo? Because how high up do you have to be to grab the chandelier to not be worried about? Yeah, they're the kind of things that went on in my head. I'm just saying.
And Peter, do you have the ashtray for the car keys somewhere in the office there as well?
Absolutely, Johnny. Yeah. And I'll have to, based on the way Ian's talking now, we're going to have to get the chandeliers reinforced in the ceiling so we can handle all this pressure.
Anyway, could you answer my question, Peter?
Everyone, I'm going to leave so as not to ruin the next story. Thank you, Miriam. That was fabulous. I really enjoyed that. It was really good. And lots in it, and lots more in it, I think, as well than came out.
Yes.
Even the bits, the Rudy bits. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
a
you
million,
all very
Johnny.
much. Talk to
Thank
you all
you, guys.
soon.
Bye, Johnny.
All right, Johnny.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, Johnny. Bye.
David, you were coming back to a question.
Well, Ian diverted us down, the swinging route. I'm just wondering, with your storyteller's eye on, just in relation to the vertigo, the story you were being told, all that stuff. I don't know. Is there another way? I was just thinking, is there even more emotional kind of heft that could be drawn out of the story as a result? I don't know.
Well, I'm going to, before I offer my view on that, what's your view? And then I'm going to ask Miriam. So what's your view first?
I don't know. I just thought there could, maybe there was a way to weave some of that stuff in to make a great story even better and more emotionally
so
resonant.
You see potential in that then would be the short version of your perspective on it.
Yeah.
What do you reckon? What do you reckon, Miriam?
I think that probably the opening lines could be different, because really, okay, vertigo did lead me down a path, but it was more of a path of tuning into something in myself, and the courage is a very big thing, I think, as well, and taking a little bit of a leap of faith and watching signs, because I genuinely did think that your garden had a labyrinth, which obviously it doesn't. So how we can be guided by prompts, I think there is I think David is right. I think there's something else I haven't quite uncovered in that story.
Yeah, and so my answer to David's question would be one way you worded it was, is there more emotional heft in the story? My guess is absolutely.
Yeah.
And the advantage I have on everybody else in the room, maybe except Paul, is I've actually been in the room in Leopardstown in the house, and I've heard Miriam share a few different stories with us, and there's been cracking emotional polarity and richness in them. So I think, Miriam, there's more, and let's face it, this is an unusual setting where we're talking into a screen. Because I've seen you tell us in the living room where you're absolutely making eye contact and it's no problem. So this is a bit of a different setting.
I could I just say, I don't think that's the point, though. I think the point David's bringing up is, like, I think your connection was fabulous and everything. I think the point David's bringing up is what was the message you were giving in the story? Because it seemed like there was, as you described it, no, it's not even that there were mixed messages. That there was depths to messages. So
okay, yes, I understand.
Yeah. So, like, a thread I would have seen all the way through your story was you were trusting, like, in the worst of your times, you were trusting yourself enough to follow a path. So, like, you went to Gillian Duffin. You'd never met Gillian. She did wonders. Yeah. You trusted yourself, trusted her to go to somewhere. You went to Peter's house. You saw a labyrinth. You were trusting yourself to go in.
Yes.
There was that to me was kind of a theme as we're reflecting on it, that was all the way through it. That then when you reflect on it, you kind of go like, geez, because I trust myself, here I am, vertigo free, and that's not what I'm even looking to, that kind of thing. I'm telling that bad, but
no, I know exactly what you mean, and you're right. And you see, that was the first time in a really, really long time that I had trusted myself, because I had just been so feckin' busy and foggy in my head with lifey stuff that the vertigo knocked me. And then from there, I started to, it wasn't a plan, like most things to do with your spirit aren't, it was just sort of this sense of being guided a little bit. Yeah, there is more to it for sure.
There is, but the fabulous part about that is you reflect, I'm not doing anything about your story, I'm reflecting on this for me, is that when you unravel stuff like that, like what I hear in your story is that the truth of you, the essence of you, knew to find a path.
Yes.
The troubled us, the busy us, is the one that gets the vertigo.
Yes.
Like the trade for me in your story was like when you strip it back and get into the heart of who you are, the answers are there.
Yes. Got it.
Like, I thought that was fantastic in the story. So I thought your courage in telling the story is fabulous, but the courage that you showed through your story to actually pull yourself out of something was fantastic. And there was almost there was two people at play. There's you and there's the imposter, the real you, and the you that had the vertigo.
Yes, because I was just so tired of everything. Yeah, that's really true. Thank you so much, guys.
I think, Miriam,
Thank you.
in answer to Ian's question, at one point you used, I think, a really powerful line that I don't recall you using in the story.
Okay.
And the powerful line I heard was, this was the first time I trusted myself.
Yes. In a very long time.
Yeah, in a very long time. That's a powerful line. I don't remember hearing that in the story.
Okay.
So going back to David's question, is there more emotional heft in the story? That to me is a practical example of it. And it came out in your interaction about the story after you told it.
After it, yes.
So, you know, for those of you who choose to come on and do the next 4 sessions, getting you into pairs and having this kind of interaction and working and teasing out helps the teller become more aware of how they're carrying their story and what's actually in it. And what might be the more valuable meaning of the story to them, which might enable them then to be more conscious and make different choices going forward. Do you know? Because the story is a living thing. So, you happy to leave it at that, Miriam?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks. All right, next person up. We've got 6 stories to go. We've got an hour. So, next person up.
I might go next.
Okay, Tomas.
I sometimes wonder, what if we reached out to and embraced some of the choices we've not made in our lives? And I asked this question of a particular morning I was driving to work last October. So my car had stopped at the red traffic light at the junction for Woodies on the one hand and heading west for the N4 on the other. And I remember looking at that red light and thinking to myself, I wasn't going to go to work. I was either going to drive halfway across the country and go for a walk, or I was going to go home, but I was not going to work. So I'd never experienced this before. In that moment, I did not know what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I wanted to go. Didn't even care. There was a big committee meeting that morning, and I did not care. So the light turns green, and I kept moving. And I went to Castletown Park, which lies about halfway between my home and the office. And I went for a walk. And I remember clearly the sky seemed to span the heavens. Cloud formations were arcing from west to east. It really, really lifted my spirits. And I actually then went to the office, a kind of a near miss, if you will. But I wonder, what if I'd carried on? What if I had not taken the slip road to the office and kept heading west on the N4? So I want you to come with me, I suppose, as a group, as I reach out to and embrace that choice. You may wish to close your eyes for this part, or you may not, it's up to yourself, but I'm asking you, I suppose, to imagine this. And I'm driving west on the N4, the hybrid engine of my car quietly humming in harmony with the treadmill sound of tar and rubber, which are embracing, disconnecting moment by moment. I'm really anxious about what my wife Sarah will think. Am I overreacting to a typically cranky morning, or is it all just a whole load of melodrama? I stop in Athlone to get petrol, and on the way out, I stop by the shop fridge to quickly text work and tell them that I'm going to be, I won't be coming in today, that I'm calling in sick. And in the glary glow of the ice chill of its ambient temperature, I feel a gentle glimmer of almost red embarrassment. So hours later, and my car rolls silently into a small sand-ridden car park in Dewey Beach in Donegal. I'm about no more than 10 minutes from Sarah's parents' home, but nobody knows I'm there. And I decide to go for a walk on the beach. So now I'm walking on the glistening sheen of the sea water, which seems to veil the sand beneath, like almost like a silver mirror. And that has a beauty all its own as the clouds, as it reflects the clouds in the sky patching their way across the sun. And I pad my way across the sheen, and I stop as the ebbing waves sweep past my feet, and they stop some distance behind. And my eyes follow the retreating waters that go around and under my feet. So I look down, and I'm transfixed as the waters seem to accelerate. They seem to scoop the sand from under my feet. They even rock me slightly. And now I feel like I'm moving backwards while the world is moving forwards, and I'm actually standing still. It's a really almost magical feeling. So I call Sarah, and we talk, and we really talk. And she tells me to stay where I am, to book in somewhere local and have myself a silent retreat. And I sit down in the gloaming, moist sand. The waters are soaking my trousers. They swirl around my legs, and I feel it all. I feel the rainy cold. I feel the mini thuds of the raindrops on the sand, the grains of sand between my toes, and even the bloating bubbles of air in my trouser pockets. I really, really feel it all. That's where my imagined story ends. And if I was to reflect on where that imagination, that imagined story has taken me, it's come for me today. And Peter said just before I came in that the story is a living thing. And I'd like to feel that although this is a very true story in many ways, for me, it's almost like my other selves, my imagined self, my other self, my past self, have come to me today in this story. I found myself feeling a bit in the middle of today, a bit like I felt that day. And this story has been walking with me for the last couple of weeks, has landed in my heart space today. I think to remind me, I suppose we can go on flights of fancy. I've often looked for the horizon, but when I look at my feet, it's very much a childhood memory, the magic that okay. And I think the whole process therefore of embracing this process with you guys, of forming that story and telling it, only today has it landed properly with me. So that's me.
Thank you, Tomas. So how are you feeling right now, Tomas?
Charged. Definitely struggling. I think it's kind of helped unearth things from that day. But I've been there was something sitting there, and I suppose what the story teaches me anyway certainly is it's not about resolving stuff. It's not about it literally is sitting with it. But I suppose it's felt awkward and struggling, but not nervous because of the beauty of this group. So I was struggling telling it, I think, or I was kind of awkward about it, but it wasn't nervous. It wasn't an anxiety as such. It's a very, very different feeling.
I think it's one of the most authentic things I've ever heard.
The way that you're able to describe, and I know when I was paired up with you a couple of weeks ago, the way your understanding and use of language and how you can paint pictures like red with embarrassment, and how you can, even words that you put in like we really talked. You're talking about Sarah, you were able to do really simple things with words and really wise, deep, heartfelt things with words. And in that story, the courage that you took, the courage that you've shown to say that story, it's like the hero in you, Tomas. And when I had my eyes closed and I was picturing it, that was the visualization I had with you, because I was with you on that beach, I was with you in the car, I was with you on the sand. You painted it so well, I could feel it. And you're able to describe things how you feel they're touching you, but you never really dipped into how you're feeling in here. But you didn't, but you didn't need to, because the fact that there was something so personal and private that you were almost giving us a glimpse of. You know, it was an honor to listen to that story, and I commend you on your courage and bravery, and you're a hero.
Totally.
Thank you,
I
Tomas.
have to. Well, I want to thank Nikki based on Miriam's comments in particular, because the session yesterday with Nikki was hugely beneficial, and I stripped, and Nikki, I hope you see, but certainly I stripped huge parts out of it. I had overcomplicated, I had too much in it, and so Miriam's comments about the simplicity of the words and all the rest was it's a bit like, I think Johnny was saying this in the last 12 hours. I went back at it again this morning, and I thought so much this needs to go. So I want to thank Nick in particular for his guidance on that.
Cheers, Tomas. I was just going to say that that image on the beach is just phenomenal. Like was it like you moving backwards, the world moving forward, and that's just phenomenal. Like it just paints an incredible picture, like that we're all right there on the beach. And I also think the story is. I think you need to hear probably a few more times to get it, because I think you're still left curious. Like I'm wondering, are you resolved? Are you going to go back and talk to your wife? Because it was like you made that choice and it was a dream that you were having, but then are you resolved? You're going to go now. Well, now I'm going to have that chat with my wife, or now I'm going to take a break. Now I'm going to leave work for a while. Now I've had this vision, so I'm now going to act on it. But it was just so powerful. There's one slight thing as well that made me kind of curious, but why you went 10 minutes to your wife's parents' house. I was kind of like, what's that all about?
Yeah.
Maybe he's got a sniper gun in his backpack.
Nikki, that's gas, because it's actually 13 minutes away from the house. I was
But not only did he go that near to his in-laws' house, but then he was going to go and stay in a B&B.
Yeah.
And then I was actually so wet, soaking my trousers. I was going to turn up in my trousers, then I'm going to get marooned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, lads, there are layers to that fucking story that even I don't understand. Layers. So you're catch them.
Oh my God, there are layers. Jeepers,
but
unbelievable.
Just that interaction there is another illustration of this idea of how we carry our stories. So there's layers to it. You will put in those details, Tomas, because there will be a reason, whether you're conscious of it or not, that it was important to put them in. Part of the work is crafting through to consciously then choose what you leave in and what you might leave out. So the question from a crafting point of view is the details serving the story? But you may well have it in there because maybe there's a whole other story around that detail, and there's another place for you to go exploring. And this is it's like Miriam's word, labyrinth. There is a labyrinth here out of our stories. But Tomas, I'm gonna leave it at that if you're okay, and we move on. Yeah. So thank you very much for the story.
Well done, Tomas.
Well done. Yeah, brilliant.
I just want to check, Ian, did you, I think, said you need to leave it about 10 to 5, is that right?
Yeah, I have an appointment at 5, even just kind of ported. So do you want me to go?
Yeah, if you're up for it.
Okay.
And my hope, guys, is that if your story takes you about 5 minutes, it gives us a few minutes to have a bit of chat, reflection, move on to the next one. So over to you, Ian.
Okay. So I could never have imagined that the inextricable pull that had me in Cork on the time of the Great Freeze in 2009 would result in a Christmas present that was to spend a night in bed with my mother. So the scene is my mother's bedroom. It's Christmas Eve, early afternoon, and all our family are there. My mother is sitting regally in her bed with my sister Siobhan. At the time, I had 2 sisters and 2 brothers. And Siobhan is lying across the bed playing with my mother's hair. My father is on her right-hand side holding her hand. And he's holding court effectively, telling us and all my mother's grandchildren, bar one, Oisin, who wasn't there, and that'll become apparently why after. He was regaling about their courtship and their lives together, and we were doing this through karaoke because my brother had the brilliant idea of bringing a laptop into the room. So as we asked him, what movies were you going to when you were going out with each other, my brother would then Google the movie and bring up Dean Martin or Bing Crosby, and my dad would sing the song and we'd sing along. And it was like a retelling through his story of our stories of growing up in front of our children, because all our children were there. And my 2 children, Brian and Sally, Siobhan's children, Dennis and Ashlyn and Cian, and Michelle's young fella Daniel, and they were singing songs that they unconsciously knew through us. Songs from Andy Williams and songs from my dad's favourite then, Bobby Darin, and he regaled us about Bobby Darin being better than all of them, but he died when he was 35 and he would have outclassed all of them, even Sinatra, who was Dad's pride and joy, and Dad would sing it to Sinatra. And so all of these would come up, and my brother, like as Dad would mention a name, my brother would Google it and pull a song, and we'd all sing the song. And then we came to my mum's song. So at this stage, we were thinking the neighbours next door are going to break down the wall and say, lads, it's like Christmas Eve, a bit of respect, like shouting and screaming and laughing and singing. And it comes to my mum's song, and it's the Red Rose Cafe. Down in the harbour, down in the Red Rose Cafe, in the harbour, there by the port just outside Amsterdam. And as I'm taking in the room, I'm seeing like all of the nephews of mine, her grandchildren, are all swaying to this, the song, and it finishes. And definitely the Kilcommonses are going to come in and call the guards at this stage. And there's silence. And we're all looking at my mum. And Siobhan, my sister, says to Mum, "It's time to go now, Mum. Oisin is waiting." And Oisin is her son, who had died at 12 a year and a half previously. And my mum had been in a coma since 4 o'clock the previous morning, and was now breathing her last breaths with all of us around. So I looked at my dad, and it was time to go to bed. And I said to him, I'd take you out to bed. And I said, if anything happens during the night, do you want me to call you? And Dad said, no, we'll see what the morning brings now. I've had my day, and that's been amazing. And so we put him down, and I came in, and I got to sleep with my mum on Christmas Eve. So I took Siobhan's place and got to rub her hair and fall asleep next to her and wake up at about 5 o'clock the following morning as she drew her last breath. And then got to lift her and bring her downstairs where we had prepared to lay her out. And Siobhan and Michelle, my 2 sisters, made her even more beautiful, had her new dress on that she was ready. And I went out for a walk, and there was snow and ice around, and I just went out in my shorts like a madman at 6 o'clock in the morning for a walk to reflect on what had just gone on and the amazing present I was given of spending time with my mum. But I had come to Cork, that pull to Cork had brought me down totally unplanned. The day before Christmas Eve, we had planned to be in Dublin for Christmas, and something in me said, come to Cork and say hello. And I got to kiss my mum going to bed the night she went to bed, and talked to her about my son, which was the last words she heard, because 2 hours later she took a turn, as we'd say in Cork. And I just thought, on reflection, wow, if ever there was a lesson to follow your gut and listen to the flow of water, as we say, I feel it in me waters in Cork. That was the present she gave me. So that's my story.
Well, you have a rare pair of lungs in you there.
How's your story sitting with you now, Ian? Haven't told us.
Sure, lovely. Lovely. It was one of the most amazing days I've had in my life. I mean, to be in a bedroom where we're laughing and shouting and screaming and singing and dancing and everything. And my mother, God bless her, couldn't see it, but was obviously in luxuriating in it. And for my dad to be able to say, that's it, like, I've had my day, so whatever the morning brings, don't wake me. And like, true to form, I went into him when I came back from my walk at 8:30 to say, like, you know, you're waking up and mum has gone on. It's like, yeah, that's grand. He was ready, so it was lovely, and a reminder and loads of lessons in it, like of all the madness that I go on with and running and racing and everything, and like I got to do that with my mum, I got to do that with my dad, I got to do that with my sister, Siobhan, who, like, 5 years later, was in the exact same position as my mother over Christmas, and she passed when she was 51. But I've been blessed in the weirdest way to be able to sleep with people I've loved as they've crossed over. So amazing gift. So that's what it brought up for me. Folly, that fucking madness.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for the story, Ian. And it's the first time I've ever heard you sing. I loved it. There's so much in what you just did there that I loved. I loved the way you brought us out of the song into Siobhan then saying to your mum, you can go now, mum. I mean, what a shift.
Yeah.
Stunning.
Thanks.
Your natural ability to weave in humor, you know, followed by really precious moments of life and loss and sadness is really unique. Because, you know, you were singing the Red Rose Cafe, and then you said, and then there's silence, you know, and it's almost like that's the way life goes, and then it's gone, it's over, and you have this natural way of weaving all the pieces. And like when you were talking about the bedroom, you know, and the family and your brother with the iPad and all the songs, it was like I could see it like a movie. You were able to really describe it with such I don't know what the word would be, but I could almost feel it, you know, you can almost feel it. And then you would land in like taking your dad to his bedroom and he said, no, I've had my day. Like unbelievably powerful short sentences that are at the end of a big painted picture. It's quite incredible. And I don't even know if you realize how well you do that.
No, I didn't, Miriam. Thanks. I don't. Thanks. Thank you.
I thought that was a lovely shift as well. In, you know, the Red Rose Cafe stops and then silence, and it helps the listener. You know, you're just flagging you're flagging something to the listener. They don't know what it is, but it's a lovely way of just setting it up and then, you know, moving to the next phase. So yeah, I thought that was great too.
Thanks, David.
Yeah,
I loved it, and I thought it was so powerful. Just so much imagery, and just a joy to listen to. It definitely got the Peter's graph going.
Yes. Yeah.
A real gift. Ian.
For me,
Just Ian, the real gift in what you've just shared, just personally, is like I can't wait, and I feel very fortunate to be able to. I can't wait to hug my mom, you know, when I see her again. and just the gift of the relationship you have with your mom. And I say have, not had, have, is beautiful.
Thanks, Conor.
For me, it's a multi-dimensional story. As you use the phrase afterwards, the gift you've had to sleep with your loved ones as they cross over. And then, I mean, there's some beautiful, I don't know why it is, but the image, and you just used this the last time as well, where you rubbed your mother's hair. For some reason, that really, really drew me in. It really, I think, draws the listener in. Tactility of that. You can imagine, you can almost feel it. And there's a palpable energy radiates throughout the story. So you open with the force of attraction that drew you to Cork. You refer to that at the end. The song is another multi-dimensional aspect what you sing as part of the story. So there's an incredible force of attraction throughout the whole thing, and there's some beautifully poignant moments. And if I heard it correctly, only as you say, it's about halfway through the story you reveal that your mother is in a coma for the previous 36 hours or whatever it is. So there's something, again, it's like kind of revealing the story layer by layer. But the rubbing of the hair, for some reason, for me now is very, very special.
You often talk, Ian, about a word coming up or something coming up, and as I listen to you, the big word for me, and it's just booming around inside of my head, is honouring. There's so much in that story that's honouring. You're honouring yourself, you're honouring your parents, your family. Everybody actually was honouring everybody. And it's just a privilege to sit and listen to it. And for me, the joy of hearing you sing, because that's a first, that for me personally was a big thing. So thank you.
Thanks.
I'm really struck by something, Ian. I can't distinguish you today from you all the time. I think you are just a natural born storyteller. That's how you communicate. I think you're pure story. It's just fascinating. Like for the rest of us, we were telling a story, but you just are storyteller completely. I don't know if that makes sense, but that was what I really felt.
Thanks, man. Thank you. No, and this has done wonders for me in all sorts of ways, and I think Pete and I have had huge discussions around this, and it's not the unveiling of kind of like a story that I wasn't aware of. It's the layers of life and how we carry them, and that, so it's just lovely. And what I was interested in doing this was to be able to bring story into my life and bring story to life, just be comfortable with story. So it's lovely to hear you say that, Mel. Wonderful teacher, my guru.
Yeah, we're all learning from each other, as you and me have often acknowledged in our chats. That's what's wonderful about this. I think it just helps reveal more progressively. And it's a bit like your story finish, Miriam, about the signs. Ian has been talking to me about signs and reading signs since I first met him. And first thing is, do we see them? The second thing is, do we read them? And the third thing is, do we take heed of them? The stages. So I've been learning that from you, Ian, all along. So I mean, this to me is privileged, joyful space to be in this right now. So I'm going to move on now. You okay to move on, Ian?
Oh yeah, thank you. Thanks.
So next up, so I think we've still a few stories to go now. So who's up next?
I go.
Nikki, yeah, go for it.
I go. Okay.
Guys, could I sorry, Nikki, before you go, I just really want to honour the space. I'm bursting to go to the loo. Could I jump out? I don't want to jump out. I want to really sort of be here.
You just go and do your job, Paul, and Nikki, you might hold fire for a minute so Paul can do what he needs to do. Go on, run, Gleeson.
Thank you.
Go.
You hold fire and I'll fire.
Yes. Thank you for that detail. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That song that Ian sang, funny enough, it was a Cork-born fiddle player that I met many, many years ago, and he was a great man for getting groups of Irish musicians, singers and dancers together. And I went off and played at festivals in Europe under the leadership of this guy. But one of his songs was the Red Rose Cafe. And he had us singing in pubs in Cork. He had us singing in pubs in Germany, in pubs in Scotland, or at festival venues. But the meaning of that song now is forever changed in a good way from hearing Ian sing it and hear how it sat in that story, because that scene you painted is such a heartwarming scene. The Red Rose Cafe.
Great song.
Yeah, it is a cracking song. Simple song, but it's a cracker. Yeah.
Not an Irish song, is it?
Yeah, the Furies, isn't it?
Furies, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Did anyone see my 3-year-old daughter come in there?
Yes.
Yeah, stunning.
Lovely.
I was like, no. She's banging on the door.
I think she was in when Ian was singing, was she?
I
think she was. Yeah.
Ran out again, did she?
No, she was happy. She was listening happily as far as I could see. Right. Paul has got himself sorted, Nicky, so you're on.
Great. Okay. I have this innate feeling that no matter what I do or what I achieve, there'll always be a slight pressure to not let my father down. Now, it's not overwhelming or it doesn't control me. It just sits with me. And I'm wondering, is it something every son has? And then this story takes you back a couple of years. It was a few weeks after the birth of my son. So I had this delightful feeling of a newborn baby, but at the same time, my regular life has completely gone out the window and was replaced with exhaustion. One March afternoon, I saw a gap to escape on a short cycle. So I managed to get my bike and go out for a little cycle. So I looked outside the window. There was blue sky, didn't look cold, and I put on a pair of shorts and a long sleeve top. Jumped on the bike, cycling down around the corner, and all of a sudden, freedom. It just felt great to be on the bike, just away from everything. And so I started cycling just up through this forest path that would take me up towards the mountains. So I was feeling great. I was just feeling free. I was pumping on the wheels, on the pedals, just going, and really enjoying it. And I said I'd get kind of to the top or halfway up the top and I'd come back. But I completely lost track of time and kept going. I was just really enjoying myself. And then I got past the trees up into the top of the summit. And all of a sudden, this big blue sky was just right in front of me with this piercing sun. And it just felt really fantastic. Now I could see in the kind of back of my, as I turned around, I could see this gray kind of looming cloud. So kind of noticed that, but I kept on going because I was feeling great. And a few minutes later, I felt a few droplets on my back. And I was going, oh, that's not a good sign. I kept on going, but the droplets got heavier. And all of a sudden they got very heavy and they were cold and they were like frozen bullets hammering down at me. And all of a sudden up there, the little bike on the top of this hill, completely exposed, I was getting hit what felt like by an army of snipers rifling down, violently pummeling me with these frozen bullets. So I had to make a decision. So I thought, as only a person with no sleep would think, that I could outcycle this storm. So adrenaline kicked in and I started going fast. I started pumping the pedals again, going faster. But there was no let up. I was still getting hit. I was still getting hit by the hailstones. But I'm going faster. Somehow, if I can get past the other side of the summit and down into the forest, I might be in shelter. So I went faster and faster. And the forest kind of crept up to me quite quickly. And I was going fast, and I noticed there was a first turn in, but I hit the turn too late, and I had to brake, and I fell down, and I went straight. My bike went flying, and I went down straight onto these nasty little small pebbles, and my leg was completely grazed. And I fell over, and I screamed out in anguish, or more of frustration and anger rather than pain, because I just hadn't been prepared for this cycle. And I just cursed myself. Why was I going for all of a sudden like a 2-3 hour cycle when I just wanted to pop out for a bit? Why was I just wearing shorts when I knew it could, if I stayed out long, it could be a freezing day? So I picked up the bike. I was relatively okay. My handlebars just needed fixing and the chain needed fixing. So I got back on the bike and I cycled along, and I thought, okay, I have to get out of this situation. I knew about half an hour upwards through the forest that there was this lone kind of petrol station. And if I could get there, get a glass of hot water, cup of hot water, warm up a bit and reassess the situation. So I decided to put my head down and churned at the wheels and sort of going and going and going, and somehow I'll get there. It'll take half an hour, 40 minutes, I'll get there. But as I looked down at my legs, they were bright purple. They were so cold that they were burning, and there was smoke coming up from them. And I looked down and I could see my legs were scaled. There was little stones still in them, and there was blood gushing down. So I was really in a bad place, and it was cold. It was so cold. But I knew I had about 15 minutes to go when I get there. So I kept on going, and I could see through as the forest came out through the clearing that there was the petrol station kind of emerged. I got to the door of the little cabin that was there, opened the door, and there was this man behind the counter with a kind of a flat cap and a grumpy old face. I asked him for a glass of water. He begrudgingly gave it to me. I asked him to heat it up, please. So he looked at me again without saying anything and gave me back a glass of hot water. I took the hot water, went over to the window, started drinking it, looked outside, and it wasn't really making any difference. I was still very cold. I was shivering. My teeth were kind of clashing, and I could see the hailstone were still like conchers. They were about that big. They were coming down, and I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to cycle back home. And at this stage, I reckon it would take me about 3 hours to get back home. So I had a choice to make. I thought I really have to call for help at this stage. And I looked down at my phone, and my battery was dead because I only intended to go for a half an hour cycle. So the battery was gone. So who would I call? I couldn't really call my wife because she would have to come with our 3-week-old son to get me, which just wouldn't have worked. And plus, I also would have probably not been allowed out in a cycle again. I looked at, I could call any of my friends, of friends that I go cycling with, I could call them, but I hadn't any of their numbers. I didn't know any of their phone numbers. So I thought, but who else can I call? And the only person left really was my dad. And I was reluctant to call my dad. Now, I have a very good relationship with my dad, but he's this strong kind of Clint Eastwood character. He's not macho or anything like that, but he's just a strong character. We wouldn't hug that often. We wouldn't say, I love you, but we do. And it doesn't really need to be said. But I was very reluctant to call him. Anyway, I did call him. I asked the grumpy old man with the cap, could I use his phone? After persuading him, he gave it to me. So I made that call. And about 30 minutes later, my dad came up through the kind of hills below and picked me up in his car. And just as he opened the door and saw me, he just said, son, or he didn't say son, no one says son. He goes, Nicky, how are you doing? And I said, Dad, I've been better, but thanks for picking me up. And the overall feeling I got was like of almost like belonging or luck that I could call on someone. And I thought to myself, if my son ever gets in this position, there's no way I'm going to feel bad for coming to collect him. There's no way I'm going to feel, oh, geez, I have to pick up my son who's stuck up in the half an hour from home. Like, so that kind of sat kind of well with me. I was going, this is great. And then my father picked me up, we drove home, and everything was fine. But still to this day, I kind of think back to that and kind of think like, you know, if I was stuck up the Himalayas, I'd be able to get home because I would have planned for it. I would have been able to work out and get home. But because I was only 3 hours away from home and I wasn't in that much of a pickle, I kind of think, did I let myself down? And in that father-son relationship, did I show a weakness, or did I kind of let him down? And I'm just wondering, is that a kind of feeling that is natural? Is it something that everyone has, or every son has, or is it just unique to me and something I have to deal with and kind of work out? And that's where I'm at. Discuss.
You're off your fucking head, Nicky.
You open to hearing a couple of reflections, Nicky, on how your story landed?
Yeah, sure. And I just say one thing. it's funny you tell the story. I forgot a good few images, but anyway, that's the way it is, I suppose. I kind of, you know, you get nervous. He's got 10 faces staring at you. But anyway.
Yeah.
You really depicted so well, like I could see it, the whole thing of, you know, a gap. You use the word gap, a gap in time to get out and go for a cycle. And you explained how you were feeling and where you were at, kind of mentally needing this freedom really, really, really well. And all along through the story, even though you were describing a bike ride, I felt it was like you were describing your life at that time. Do you know what I mean? There was maybe a little bit of new things and changes and things that you didn't see coming in, and you know, stuff that was just the birth of your son. You know, you were a dad only a short amount of time. It was like you were telling us about your life through a cycle in the mountains. And I thought it was really, really clever how you described the man. You're very good at describing the man in the cabin. I could almost see him. And then the fact that you said your dad was like Clint Eastwood, but he wasn't macho. I knew exactly what you meant. So you're excellent at describing things and painting a picture. And the fact that this is something that's crossed your mind over a long period of time. Really well said, really well told.
Thanks a million.
Yeah. I thought for me you evoked some fabulous emotion to the point where I was wondering what you went through when you delivered that child, because that's how I felt. You were so wrapped up in it. Like, what was the birth?
I didn't give birth to the child.
Oh, fuck. Right, sorry, I got that bit wrong. Sorry. But that's how brilliant. That's how brilliantly you evoked the emotion of what you were going through.
Yeah.
I felt that you had, like, I thought the reason you went down the bike was to get rid of the bump. That was brilliant. Well done, Nikki.
Really good.
What I was, and you know what it really brought up for me, I thought just fabulously, was the first day you came on this, you wanted to do a story for a coffee morning or something that you do with the girls. And it was like a coffee story. And I thought, like, wow, this is my first time hearing your story. Like, it's the furthest thing from a coffee story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you said the first day, like if I meet some bloke for a cup of coffee or something, I just want to be able to shite on a bit and give him a story. Like.
Yeah, because you really did. I thought that was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, unbelievable. What you were left with, though, I was intrigued by, because on the call on Friday, somebody was was emotional about the position their son was in. And I really wanted to say to him something like, I really want to I felt very strongly about, sometimes the best advice you can give really to somebody is, if it was your child, what would you do? You know, if you find it hard to do something for yourself. Yeah. And I felt that on Friday, if he could say, okay, if this was my son who was with a group of very trusted people and he could open up and be emotional, whatever, how would I feel about that? And I'd be delighted for him. And like, you had your little son, and isn't it lovely to think that you would want him to call you? Yeah. And you would want, and it's all the small things. It's not the big things that fathers and sons will ever do together, or siblings or whatever. It's those small acts of pure love and kindness and whatever that really, they're everything. And I think that, for your dad to have that opportunity to do something really nice for you and kind of rescue you and, maybe feel a bit of sympathy, like, gee, that you were going to get a bollocking when you got home or whatever, like you were just giving him a fantastic opportunity, I felt. And I thought, like, there was so much, like, it was told brilliantly. Fantastic.
Well, great, because I thought I got a bit tongue-tied for that bit, because, I got a bit tongue-tied for that, but I'm glad you understood it, or you heard it.
I was struck. Sorry, Tomas, go on.
You go ahead. David.
I echo what everyone says there. I was really struck by, I could really feel your anger and your frustration. I was also wondering, in terms of your reflection, I know it was almost like a question, which was great, but I know it's, maybe a phrase that Ian and Peter, I've heard them use, in our conversations, the idea, in terms of making your story even more powerful, you know, that idea of the story that's running in your head, because you had a story running in your head about the way I'm potentially supposed to be around my father or how I'm supposed to appear to him. And I also had a story about, oh geez, if I ring him now, he's just going to be pissed off.
Mm.
And of course, I think the lovely payoff is he just pulls up and goes, Nicky, how you doing? You know, so it's almost like, because I you know, in terms of that reflection and making the story even more universal, because that's, you know, I do that every day of the week. You know, I project into, oh, this is how they're going to react. How do I know they're going to react like that until I actually go and have the conversation with them or pick up the phone or whatever? But like, I will do that all day long, you know, instead of just, why don't you just pick up the phone and make the call, and then it'll be what it'll be. And of course, you know, I think that Tom Petty has that one of those lines in his songs, most of the things we worry about never happen anyway. You know, so it's just, that was just something that struck me.
So guys, I'm just going to intervene now because I'm conscious of time. Nicky, thanks a million for that.
I'm
there's
going to
loads
jump up rather than disturb. So this is recorded, so I'll be able to see
the last two, the last three. Yeah. So we still got Mel, Paul, and David to go. Yeah.
Go just for 5 as well, Peter.
Okay.
Guys.
Go 5 as well. Yeah.
All right.
See you, Ian. God bless.
See you, Tomas.
So Mel, would you be up for going
let
next?
Paul go, or Paul or David go next. Yeah, honestly, let the lads go next. I'm dying to hear their stuff.
Paul, are you up for going?
Yeah, I'll go. So this is a story of freedom, fear, love, and growth. And it's a story, the ending may never be written. For the first 39 years of my life, I have really valued freedom. It's been a value that's guided how I've lived, how I've loved, how I haven't loved, how I've traveled, how I've adventured. And this story begins in earnest on a Saturday evening in Limerick. I was at home in my folks' house, just gotten into bed. It was just after 11 o'clock. And I put my phone on a little tiny desk in my old room where I used to study and hatch dreams and plans for the future. And I wasn't long in bed and the phone beeped, a text message came in. So I picked up the phone, I had a quick look. And the text message was from a friend of mine saying he had a girl in mind that he thinks I should meet, thinks would be a good pair. So I was surprised at the text message and gobsmacked at the particular character it was coming from. This is not Mr. Cupid. So I was sort of curious and texted back and I said, who is she? And he gave me her name. So like any shallow, single 39-year-old male, I had a quick Google online, see what she looked like, and God, she's pretty cute. So numbers were exchanged. So I was a bit slow off the mark. About 6 weeks later, I figured, right, how do I bridge this gap? So I can't remember the gist of what I texted her, but I do remember there was a line in there. I was trying to put in a bit of humor. I said something along the lines of, I hear you're dying to meet me. So she was with, ballsy enough, I thought at the time, but she was with a friend of hers I didn't know when she got the text message. So not only did she delete the text, but she deleted my name from her phone. So I persisted. Another month or so later, we had our first date. And I'm sitting in the pub and this value of freedom I've mentioned tends to impact my timekeeping. I can be a bit lax at times. So I texted her on the way in, say, look, I'm running a little bit late, but I'll be about 15 minutes late. So again, I didn't know she was out for dinner with her friends. She's like, this gobshite, listen, I'll go for one drink. I'll be back shortly. So I go in anyway, and I'm waiting for her, and she walks in, and there's this glow, this energy coming off her that I couldn't describe. Yes, she was gorgeous, but there was something different about this young lady. So she stayed for more than one drink, and we started seeing each other. But over the course of the next year or so, as we dated, there was a certain element of fear that I was still living in. And for both of us, we had a lot of stuff going on. It was a pretty turbulent time in our lives. And fast forward about 12 months, we go on our first foreign holiday. And we're in Greece, we're on a gorgeous beach, and we're having a chat. And the lady in question says to me, you know, where are you at with us? You know, what are your thoughts? And I've always been very open and honest. And I said, I just don't know if marriage, kids, it's not you. I'm just not sure if that's in my future. And she was pretty upset. So that night was a quiet one. And the following morning, we were due to go out on a boat to go for a walk on a volcanic island. So we're sitting on the boat with about 30 other people, and she's upset. And I know she's upset. And we have a little bit of a chat. And she said to me, Paul, I'm trying to put on a brave face, but I'm really upset. And I can still vividly remember she was sitting exactly where she was sitting on the boat, because there was something beautiful about this vulnerability she was sharing with me. So we get to the island, and she says, I'm going to stay here. I just need my own time. So I went off for a walk on my own. And I'm coming to literally a fork in the road. And I'm picking a path that I'm going to walk. And for some reason, I looked down and I picked up 2 small volcanic stones. And I started walking with these. And I don't know where this came from, but I just felt a sense of, take the 2 of these in your hand. I was holding them in one hand. And I was trying to check in on and feel like, if these 2 stones are symbolic of this young woman and me spending our life together, what does that feel like? Check in with that. Is it something you really, really want? And at one point I took the stones apart and I put them in 2 different hands. And I did the same thing, but I was walking, trying to go, okay, if we go our separate ways, what does this feel like? And about 20 minutes later, there was complete clarity. And I knew I wanted to spend my life with this lady. So I walked back to the boat and I told her I had the stones in my pocket and I still have them to this day. And she was delighted. We had a bit of a schnog. And a year later, we came back to Greece on our honeymoon. So Colette and I are now happily married, and we had a little baby boy, as many of you know, 14 months ago. But here's the interesting thing for me on this is I had a lot of fear around, if I commit to this, what could go wrong? What might go, what if this doesn't work out? Am I being fair to Colette? You know, what about me? The fear I also had was this sense of freedom. Oh, will that be lost if I'm in a relationship, and will I be tied down as such? Very immature in a way, feelings or thoughts. But what I've sort of realized is that the love basically overshadowed any of the fear that I have. And it's bringing me into this chapter of growth. And there was a part of my soul that I've always felt is alive when I'm free, when I'm out in nature, when I'm doing things. But what I've realized through meeting Colette, and this is still evolving, and having a family, is that the love that comes with that is actually setting a light, and it's igniting my full soul. And I'm trying to marry and couple Paul, the guy who likes going off doing adventures. Well, I'm a family man now, and how does all this sit and merge and integrate? And that's the chapter that I think I'll be happily writing that for the rest of my life. That's me.
Thank you, Paul. How are you feeling, Paul, after sharing that story with us?
I'm feeling good because, to be honest, I spent a couple of hours at this yesterday and I still didn't know, will I take this bit out? Will I take that bit out? And I was just like, fuck it, just see what comes up. So feeling good, yeah.
Good man. Now, Tomas, I know you, go on, Mel, go on.
I'd love to see a movie made of that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Oh my God. It's beautiful. It was just like a conversation. It wasn't like, it was like just a conversation. It just flowed. It was fabulous.
Do you know, Mel, I was, I don't know, were you there that night, Miriam, but Paul and Colette came to the story sessions in the house here one night.
Yeah, I wasn't.
And there was a couple of people. Were you there that night, Miriam?
No, I wasn't.
So there was a couple of people on the, like, people introduced themselves to each other and then we just go off with the story. You did the virtual version of it last week. But as the night wore on and people were more tuned to the fact that Paul and Colette were a couple, so now we had the live couple in the room, not just one half of it. They said, will you tell us how you met? Will you give us the 2 sides of it? So Colette told her version of the story first and people loved it. and then Paul got to tell his side. So we got to hear the two perspectives on some of those things Paul said about that first date. Absolute
Amazing.
hilarious stuff, and a beautiful undercurrent of just love and opening up to life and all that. But you had both things going on. Wonderful.
I heard that story last week and I absolutely loved it. But today I adored it. And it was very obvious to me that you had crafted it and chiseled away, and brought some things in and left some things out. And the thing that you've nailed on both occasions is the ability to completely give us a sense of what she's like as a person, her spirit, her aura, her presence, and also yourself. You know, this man who loves freedom and kind of like a MacGyver character, loves to do all these manly outdoorsy things, but then, like, you know, volcanic stones on an island, and which way will I go? You know, it's like kind of macho man and spiritual man all in Paul Gleason, and it's absolutely fabulous. And I agree with Mel, there's a movie in there.
Peter, can I come in very quickly?
Do, Tomas, because I know you need to go. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I've got 4 minutes literally. I want to say 2 things to Nikki. One, if you haven't seen the film Gran Torino, starring Clint Eastwood, you got to watch it. And watch it to the very end, because it stars Clint Eastwood, and your story reminded me of it, and vice versa. The second thing I will say is your use of the word piercing son reminded me of Christ. And there's a lot more in that, because the third thing is the gap to escape and the birth of your son, and you pushing yourself, and it was a very visceral story. So definitely watch Gran Torino and call me when you've watched it. To Paul, I would say, I thought every story has been so resonant here, and yours included. And I love the fact that in a beautifully poetic way, you finish as you said you would start. The story doesn't end, and you're still writing that chapter now. And that shift in your life from the lover of freedom, embracing freedom, that's your core value, to the fear, and the fear you're sitting with perhaps still, but it's part of the love. I love the phrase, love overshadows all. That for me was a beautifully crafted story. I could say more, but I really have to go. So, and I'm sorry, Mel, I'm missing yours, and David as well. I do want to watch it afterwards. But thank you so much, folks, and I hope you're back with whoever's come back next week. But that's been amazing. I wish I could stay longer, but it's been amazing.
Thanks a million, Tomas. All right.
Bye, Tomas.
Bye. Bye.
I was just going to say, Paul, I love the 3 images, like Limerick, first of all, like kind of a guy in his mid-30s with his parents, or man, like, you know, you're in your parents, like older, you're an older person in your parents' house getting the text message from a mate who you're not sure if he's your best mate, and he's a random person, and then he's setting you up on a date while your parents are probably in the room next door. And then just going, I suppose, then going to the pub, like having the date in the pub, like it resonates probably with everyone when that person comes in. You're kind of going like, you know, the odd blind date, you go, who is this person? And then the way she had that glow straight away. And then just taking it straight from Limerick and maybe a gloomy but glowy pub to the beach in Greece, where it's just the contrast of the different scenes was great to hear. And then the delivery was very calm, and like there was no ahs or buts. It really flowed. Like it was quite calming to listen to, even though it was full of emotion. It was kind of enjoyable to sit back and kind of, maybe it's your voice just to kind of take it in and just go. It's a good storytelling voice.
Thank you.
Are you up for one more observation, Paul?
There's the 2 rocks.
Ah, wow.
Brilliant.
I can explain that maybe at the end if we've time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I echo everything that's said. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the story, and at times you might have noticed that I was getting amused, but part of why I was getting amused was because I was remembering back to you and Colette telling the 2 sides of the story, and now I'm hearing another version of it in the way you tell it today. But in terms of powerful phrases, love overshadowing everything, or all, love overshadowing fear was powerful. And the other one that I absolutely loved was this idea of it setting alight my full soul. So for a guy who values freedom, to end up throwing in a line like that, just throwing me into it. And I know you a long time. I'm glad I do. But I hadn't heard you say something like that before. Just loved it. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Mighty. So we're ready to move on. We've got 2 stories left. If you guys have got the time to stick with this, I have, because I'm just hanging on every word I'm hearing. Yep. Nikki and Miriam, are you okay to stay for 2 more? Yeah. Great. So Mel, are you up for going?
Seriously, I'm cool. I don't mind if I don't do mine. I'm dying to hear David's.
Well, let's do a deal then, Mel. We'll hear
let's do
you.
David's first.
What about if we hear you first, and then David will round us off? He usually rounds us off on press pause, so he might round us off on this story round as well. What about that?
Okay.
Right. All right.
Okay, so I won't do my opening sentence again because we already know that.
Go on, treat us to it.
No, you're grand. So B was 61. He was fit. He was healthy. He was active. Like, this had kind of barreled out of nowhere, but I felt really composed, really calm. You know, I knew how to focus. I knew how to keep my mind clear. I was no stranger to death, and I knew the finality of it. And I knew that, you know, I needed to embrace the next few days, that this was the time to, you know, make sure he was well honoured before he'd fade from people's hearts and minds. So I held my son, and his heart just broke. But I really believed that he'd come to feel very privileged that he was with his dad, that he was the one who started CPR, that he rubbed his head and told him how much he was loved, and that he witnessed that he had slipped really painfully and easily from this life. And his last words were really proudly telling Rudy, "Oh, I let Mel have a lie on this morning," and he just slid to the floor of the train. So then Niall arrived into the family room in the hospital, and B was the youngest of 6 boys from Limerick, and but Niall, his nephew, was much more than family, much closer. And for me, Niall was a guy who was, you know, he totally lacked sentimentality. He detested platitudes. Like, I kind of revered that in him. But when Niall arrived, and seeing his pain and his loss and how huge it was, I felt safe. I knew it would be different this time. This wasn't going to be like when our little boy Warren died. So Aoife was going to have a terrible journey home from Vancouver. She was closer to her dad now that he was besotted with Max. We were all really surprised that B had emotionally engaged so much with his grandson. But I also felt very strongly that I needed to be sure that no worry or concern from me would impact any decisions that my children would make about their lives. And there was a phrase going around in a loop in my head, and it was kind of, you know, I could be rattling around for another 30 or 40 years. Has to be a good life. Kind of has to be a good life. And so I was already, you know, and kind of from experience, I was already looking for the silver linings. So I knew that it was Friday the 13th, and B was a bit superstitious. He'd have been so chuffed to think he died on a Friday the 13th. Like, he'd have loved it. He also had a thing where we always left the party while you still really wanted to be there. And I kind of felt, yeah, that's how he lived and that's how he died. And as they go, his was a great death. Our children were growing up in Dunfer. He hadn't died away on a business trip, or he hadn't died behind the wheel of a car and killed somebody else. And ours was it was a great and a terrible love story. Thankfully not in equal measure, but this had been a time of real kind of love and tenderness. So that felt good. And we had a lovely kiss goodbye that morning, and nice words were spoken. So I found all of that hugely consoling. Yeah, so we laid him out in this kind of, it was unadorned bog oak, and it was lined with a beautiful Donegal tweed. Like, this was more a piece of mastercraft than a coffin. And B was very stylish. He'd have actually loved that, you know. And like, so the messages and the people, whenever it started coming in from all corners of the globe, you know, love and sorrow and whatever. And you know, he was really kind of a humble and a funny man, and he touched an awful lot of lives. But you know, and he was considered to have no ego. But I just knew, like, every time I'd see it, I knew he would have he'd been thrilled to see. Like, there was 25,000 plus people reached on Facebook. It was daft, but it was crazy, you know. But anyway, I find myself, I'm standing down on the beach looking up at our front room, and his coffin is perched in the window looking out over the harbour, and it was kind of his favourite spot in the house, you know. And it's 4:30 in the morning, and the laughter and the music, and it was crazy. But like that, it was kind of coming near to Halloween, and I was sort of afraid, like, some passerby would come and ring the guards thinking there was some kind of a crazy occult thing going on, you know, that this coffin and the madness, like. But anyway, so the crematorium then was packed to absolutely overflowing, really packed. And so I had picked 4 people and 4 songs to kind of tell about this man. And so one was Andrea Bocelli's Vivere, Dare to Live. And that's how we had embraced life. And like, I remember that song. I remember us moving from Ennis to Dublin, and we driving with the windows rolled down, and that song belting out, like, and we were just living to the max. It was great. And the next song then was Paul Brady's The Island, because that song was kind of the setting of the time. We were young couples, and that was kind of the mood or whatever. And then Aoife, just like, the place erupted in laughing. Like, she outed her dad as this closet country and western fan, like, to Garth Brooks, The Dance, you know. And then, like, we'd lived in Wills since the year 2000, and we had all sorts of wishes written down or whatever. So his own chosen funeral song was Pavarotti's Brindisi. And he thought this was kind of the sexiest song in the world, and he loved the energy of it. And yeah, that was his funeral song. And so when that song came on, and just everyone just stood up, and there was a huge applause, and the coffin just slid from view. But it was a lovely, lovely send-off. And so back home then, you know, a day or two later, in the silence, and so I'm there, and this box comes into my head, and it's kind of about the width of my shoulders and twice as long, and it's carved from walnut, but it's kind of warm to touch, and it's really simple. It's so elegant, it's so simple. And I just see myself packing the 38 years of our lives into that box, and there's the beautiful and the joyful, the terrible and the tragic. And you know, this was going to be a safe place to hold these times. And I just took this big wide organza ribbon and tied a red bow in that box, and just set it there, grateful for those times. And you know, B was gone, and I would carry on. And I knew, like, so in my head, there was just this blank, just this grey blanket, absolutely no vision of the future. None. I would miss him till the end of time, but I knew I had to live this good life. This voice was still going on in my head. And so eventually I started, well, what's a good life? So I Googled it. And actually, Google has an answer. And so there's this Harvard study that's been going on for almost 80 years. And a good life depends on the quality of your close relationships. That's the one most important factor in living a good life. So I'm undaunted by challenges, but actually, when people have a reason to get into my space and you know, comment on how I live or whatever, I can be undone by that. So I decided anyway, I was going to live the next few years, and I was going to be greedy about this. I was taking 3 North Stars. And so one, I promised myself I would feel only what I felt, and I would not let anyone project onto me. And that was really important. And 2, I would only have close relationships with people who were living fully. That was it. And the 3rd thing was that my future would be as good as my past. And that's it.
Wow. Thank you, Mel. How are you feeling having told the story?
I feel good about it. I wasn't as nervous as I was initially.
Good.
Yeah, there's probably things that made no sense and whatever, but it's good to tell it. It's good to tell it in a place of trust.
That's the sense I get from you. It's the energy I'm almost picking up from you, you know, over the screen. I thought you have a lovely conversational style. You know, your humor, your ability to find humor in the situation and still be able to tune into that is just great. And I was really struck by that lesson that I've been taking from the last couple of sessions is, you know, you've got to tell your story to try and understand it, and it's in the telling of it and the excavating of it, like we were talking about this morning earlier. That's where you start to do make interesting discoveries for yourself. And I just thought that's what you were doing there. And you're right, you are in a safe space, in a trusting space, but I'm still blown away by your, you know, your just ability to go there and do it. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd echo the sentiment of being blown away. And for me, listening to you, man, there was a beautiful warmth that was just jumping out at me as you told the story. Maybe picking up on your point, David, with the energy, it just seemed that you and B just, like, pardon my French, just lived the bollocks out of life. Like, just really just went for it. And even just the fact when you say B, you know, and whether, what was his name, Brian or
Brendan,
just the fact when you say B, there's a warmth, playful love there, that I actually, as you described him and told all those beautiful stories, I was like, God, I'd love to meet this fella. I'd love to have a pint with him, you know. So it was just pure love and warmth to come. And I think similar to how you mentioned with Ian about being a natural conversation storyteller, I put the mirror right up to you on that one.
Wow, thank you. Thank you.
I was just thinking the exact same thing, because the ease in which you tell an incredibly sad story in many ways, and yet has such love and hope and magic. And, you know, I had such a sense of your husband, the way you described him. I love the way you dropped in details about your family without saying, that's my daughter and Max is my grandson. You kind of just assumed we knew them, which is fabulous, because we do, when the way you put it in context. And, you know, the songs and the 3 North Stars, it was incredible. And every time you said B, you smiled. So it was like such a heartfelt story, but you were honest as well. You know, you painted, you told the truth. It was a life of lots of things. Do you know what I mean? You weren't overly painting a rosy. It was just a really beautiful, sacred story, and it came completely from your heart through the screen. And thank you so much for sharing it, because it was
Thank you.
beyond courageous. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mel, I love the story. I just thought it was full of joy and happiness and love. And I love the way I just thought at the start you said something about like be fading away from people's minds. But then at the kind of like the whole story was the opposite of that nearly, because you kind of celebrated his death so well that he would never fade from people's minds. So I just thought that kind of worked out perfectly. And then I love it at the end when you say that the third point of the past or the future being just as good as the past, because you know you're going to keep his memory alive. It's not going to fade, and you're going to have you're going to celebrate your life and your strength. It was just very strong. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
There was 2 lines, Mel, that I just loved, of just looking down at some things that I'd noted. So a very simple one, actually 3 different things. One was the 2 of you are very much of the mindset you love to leave a party when you actually still wanted to be there. Just in one sentence, you said so much about your mindset. And that's another example of less is more. We can come up, we can say a lot. This very poignant image of, the second one was a great and a terrible love story. Thankfully, not in equal measure. Another absolute cracker of a line. And again, it speaks volumes, Mel. And the way you're carrying the story as you share it with us, we are comfortable that when you say not in equal measure, the balance is clearly on the great side rather than the terrible. So you've conveyed that without words, a brilliant piece and a micro moment of brilliant storytelling. And the third one is this idea of 38 years of our lives being packed into a box. And so I was thinking, wow, what an image. That's so poignant. And then you went, I think you tied a red ribbon on it. And it was almost like, this isn't the right words now, but feck it.
Yeah.
At that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, I had this gift, and a lot of people don't get 38 years. And oh my God, that was a gift. And it wasn't poor me. It was how lucky was I.
And like I've heard the first time you made a huge impact me on a press pause is when you shared the insight about this promise to yourself not to take other people's projections, to just feel what you truly feel. Of course, I didn't know the backstory from where that came. Subsequently, then you acknowledged about your husband dying, but today you gave us the backstory, and it's not just one gem. There's 3. You had 3 North Stars. So again, I can sit there and listen to that, man. I can say, gee, they're all brilliant. I'll grab those and I'll run with them. That's the gift. So as well as a really moving and enjoyable story, you gave us great gifts to finish with. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to echo Peter there, I thought there was 1 or 2 lessons there. And I think one of them, when you said that to you know, it was okay because you kissed your husband goodbye, you had a nice goodbye. And I think that resonates with me, because my wife always says whenever we have an argument, make sure when we leave that everything's been resolved. Or if we have an argument at night, let's just kind of try and resolve it before we go to bed, even if it's 4 o'clock in the morning. But it's just to kind of not part in bad ways, and you know, and that is kind of true, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
So thank you, Mel. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Now, David Duggan.
Yep.
Over to you.
Okay. Right. So this is the story of I suppose, Peter, maybe we're ending on a slightly lighter note, but anyway, we'll give this a go. This is
this is your story, David, so don't be making any qualifications. Just serve us up your story and allow us to experience the treat of it.
Okay. So this is the story of a piano, a small personal lockdown triumph, and the lesson that it has served to both remind me of and teach me anew. But the story actually begins about 12 years ago with a piano that entered my parents' house and belonged to my sister, who had gotten it to learn how to play on it. you know, it was your bog standard, very old, upright piano with brown paneling and ivory keys that were actually beginning to turn yellow at the edges due to its age. But it became an instrument that I, as well as my sister, became drawn to every time I go to visit my parents. And I'd always find myself spending even a short amount of time, you know, lifting the lid and picking out chords and notes, and fascinated by the sound and fascinated by the sound, how it worked, and really the magic of an instrument that somehow to me just felt really welcoming and calm, and in a strange way just kind of full of wisdom and wonder. And then fast forward to a couple of years, and my sister, the nominal owner of the piano, is now living in New York. And I had been dropping hints to my dad that now that I had put down roots of my own, and that she was away, and where was she going to live when she came back, and where was she going to put the piano, etc., that if the opportunity ever arose, I'd be more than happy and willing to take said instrument off his hands. But of course, like his typical response to me was, well, you know, I don't think your sister would be up for that, and as long as she's not up for that, you know, I'm not up for letting it go either. And I'd do the same with my sister, and she'd always say, well, I'm not too sure. So I kind of left it. But in the meantime, I had kind of a sort of mini revenge, if you like, because I managed to commandeer her keyboard, which she had also got, because she's, I don't know, the golden child or something. Anyway, she got herself a keyboard, or managed to get a keyboard out of my parents, which she'd been using to bring it down to Offaly, where she was studying. So she would use this keyboard while she wasn't at home. So I'd commandeering it, thinking that if I couldn't have the piano, then I could at least begin to learn on the keyboard. But as you might expect, since bringing it home in something like January 2018, it had been lying idle on its stand in the back room of our house, barely used despite my best intentions. Until about 6 weeks ago, when lying in bed one morning, I had a bolt from the blue. The keyboard. Could I use the extra time that lockdown has afforded me to finally realise this ambition that had been lying deep within me for so long, learn how to play the damn thing? So, as sometimes happens when you make a decision, the universe conspired in my favour. So, scanning on Google later that morning, I found an online keyboard course that was reduced from €200 to €20. And then I made the all-important discovery that really meant I had no more excuses. So learning a new musical instrument can be, you know, as anyone maybe who's done it or has experience of people in their house doing it, it can be a painful assault on the ears, not just for the student, but for the poor, unfortunate people around them. But when I looked later that morning, I discovered that my sister's keyboard had an input for a headphone socket, meaning that I would be the only person who would be subjected to all the bum notes and the discordant noise of learning the keyboard. And I realized, look, I have no excuse. If I don't do this now, I was never going to do it. And it was going to be something that would always just kind of, you know, nag at me, and I'd always regret it. So I started, and I began the process of learning the shapes of the chords, syncopating your left and right hand, and just going through the physical discomfort, which I hadn't expected, of just holding your body and your arms and your hands in a new and uncomfortable ways. And over the past 6 weeks, thankfully the pain has gone away, and I'm able to say now that I can actually play the thing. Not well, but I can do it. And it's remarkable when I reflect on 2 months ago that I couldn't. And then 2 weeks ago, I get a call from my dad telling me that he'd been speaking to my sister because he was thinking about getting rid of the piano because he was looking to get some work done on the house. And would he mind if he did get rid of it? And her response to him was that as long as it stays in the family, she's happy for it to go elsewhere, i.e. to me. So last Thursday, the piano was lifted into our house, over the threshold, if you like, up on its side, brought into the front room, and it has been slowly getting itself settled and nestled and comfortable in its new home. And of course, I've been playing it and really enjoying it. But my reflection on this kind of this tiny, what do I call it, lockdown triumph, if you like, it's reminded me of how starting and trying new things is uncomfortable and unsettling, but that really starting is the hardest part. And once you get going and get a bit of momentum behind you, it's remarkable how other energy and forces conspire in your favor and help you on your way. And for me, it's just been a reminder of a universal truth that I know I always need to kind of go back to and remember and bear in mind when I begin any new initiative or phase of my life or an adventure. So that's, yeah, I'll also reflect on COVID-19 as the period when I just saw an opportunity and kind of grabbed it. So that's my story.
Thank you, David. Good man. How are you feeling now, having told the story?
Good, yeah. Like I said at the start, like I didn't know, like when I saw these sessions happen, I said, oh, I'll give this a lash. And I didn't really have a story when I went into it. And it just emerged over the last few weeks. And then, yeah, why did I start talking about this? Because it was when I got put in the group with Mel that I really said 2 weeks ago, I said, oh, I think there might be something in this and I have to excavate it. So that's what this has taught me more than anything else. Yes, there's some technique involved. There's, the emotion and all that stuff. But there's actually, if that's the story that's coming up, then sit with it and you've got to do the work of uncovering a little bit of the meaning.
Yeah.
There's bits edges you could knock off that and all that type of thing. I know that, but that's been the big learning for me. So it feels good. Thanks.
Great. Are you open to hearing a couple of reflections?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
I loved it. And there's loads of stories in your story. It's more than just about COVID, I think, and the piano. The family element of it and the relationship with your dad and you and your sister and the relationship of you and the piano back then and now, and the whole thing of trying something new. And I really felt like the piano was a character. Do you know what I mean? The piano had this, like what you used the word about, it kind of had a wisdom to it. You were sort of a bit intrigued, and I really felt that. So I think that there's probably loads more stories to come from that one story, and you said it so well and it flowed so easily, and I could totally see and feel it.
Thanks a million.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Well,
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And having seen you play the guitar, and I know the humility that you have, like David's an amazing musician.
Yes.
Like you're probably unbelievable at this stage, even though you're saying. But to pick up on Miriam's point about the piano like being a character and coming into your home, and what I just feel off you is the experiences and the magic that's going to happen around that piano for your family and relatives, friends, etc. I sort of feel excited for that.
We looked it up. It came from Germany or something. Though obviously, just a Google of the manufacturer, and apparently these pianos were manufactured between 1916 and 1939. So obviously World War II put paid to this poor fella, And then on the when you lift up the lid, there's another logo on it, or insignia for a piano shop in Glasgow. So it came from Glasgow. It's in the last century, so it's fascinating. Where has it been? I've no idea. The house around the corner from us, then it's been here, or it was my dad's house, now it's here. Like, they're fascinating things, really.
I love the reluctance of your parents and your sister to give it to you as well. It's just like it's old school family. You're just going, why would he be giving it to you, David? Come on, take the guitar instead. We're not giving you the piano.
Get your own.
Be wasted on you. Yeah. I just love that. And then and I love the image of you lying in bed, because we probably all done it throughout COVID-19, just lying there going, what the fuck's going on? And they're all going like, hang on, I know what I'll do today. I'll play the piano. It's a great image.
I love the. Oh, sorry.
Go on, Mel. Go.
No, it's just that term of endearment, the thing. I was talking about the keyboard, but it was you still loved it, even though it was the thing.
Yeah.
But and because I have not a note in my head, I have no comprehension of music. I'm music blind, except that I love and adore it, but I know nothing about it. So we talk about chords and notes, I don't know the difference. but you get this, and the wisdom of it. Whenever I say, oh yeah, you know, whatever about all the technicalities of it, you see the same magic and incredibleness in it as I do, which I love.
Yeah.
And I also saw a
Yeah.
huge parallel between yourself and Miriam. For me, both of your story was, you take one step and whoa, it's a whole road that expands in front of you. It's not just that one step. And I love that in both the stories. It was fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that kind of ties in with the point I was going to share with you, David. I loved your reflection at the finish. And again, this idea that if you tell the story, Johnny said it at the start, it's the great Carl Rogers quote, that which is most personal is most general. So when you share with us that starting and trying new things is unsettling, it's difficult. And actually, it's the start that's the most difficult.
Yeah.
And as you're saying that, like, I'm fine, oh, Jesus, absolutely it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it's getting into exercise or learning a new musical instrument or learning something online, it's making the start. So there's that truth, but there's a lovely story hanging out of it then to give us the feel-good factor around digesting that lesson.
And the other, you know, like in reflecting on where we're at as a business and below the line, you know, we've been challenged obviously by COVID-19.
Yeah.
You know, so we're in the process now of trying to reinvent ourselves. So
that's right.
And I could absolutely add to that story and say, like, I've been banging my head off a brick wall the last 2 weeks at times trying to work stuff out and learn new stuff. But I'm thinking I've gone back to kind of go, well, look, 6 weeks ago you couldn't play the piano, so bit of time, just keep chipping away to get there. So it's that's why the story I think came to me. That's why I said I better focus on this, and there's something in it because it's playing out in other areas of my own life. Right.
There's a brilliant idea off the back of that, David, which is, given that you, me, David and Ian are in that business along with others, both of you have told stories that have got great lessons in them. And there is a thing there that if you have a group of people involved in something together and they're wondering how they might go at it, you know, how they might make a start to that most difficult thing you said, one way of doing that is ask each person to share a story of something important from their own life that they learned something from and that they think that lesson might be relevant, and just explore how that relevance could potentially play out. And off you go. You know?
Yeah.
So look, folks, I know we've gone way over time. Thank you so much for your openness, your honesty, your graciousness, both in the telling and the listening and the offering of the observations. I've loved it. The idea, as I flagged last week, is we're going to keep going for another series of 4 from next Tuesday onwards. I flagged it on the email yesterday. It'll be a change in time, 3:30 to 5. If you're interested in keeping going, I would be thrilled. And the idea is in that, as I said last week, the idea is to give attention to how do you better connect with the listeners, whoever they might be, while recognizing that to do that, the first part of work is better connecting with yourselves. So the idea over the next 4 sessions, if you choose to come along on the journey, will be do a few simple exercises that give you ways of better connecting in yourself, so you become better able then to pass that on to others, and you pick up the lessons along the way. And the lovely thing for me about this is we're all learning from and with each other as this unfolds. So that's the plan. If that's of interest to you, you can let David know, and I will look forward to seeing whoever is steaming on next Tuesday afternoon at 3:30. And thank you again, an absolutely heartfelt thank you for the sessions, and particularly today. For me, it's just been wonderful.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Peter.
Brilliant
Thanks so
time.
much,
Thanks
Peter.
a
It's been
million,
amazing.
Pete.
Bye, everyone.
Guys.
All right.
See ya.
Thanks a million, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Oh, and by the way, I'll have to learn a bit about the recording. I might have to rely on my head of IT, Ian Kingston. But my aim will be, if you're up for it, that I'll see about transferring the recording. Maybe I can do that through retransfer or Dropbox or something. But if I send it to each of you, then you'd have access to the stories. Would you up for that?
Yeah.
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 Great.
Brilliant,
Yes,
brilliant.
definitely.
There's another piano player in the making, David.
Yeah.
Possibly.
A hungry
Surprise
piano
guest.
player.
Yeah.
Brilliant. See you, folks.
Bye, guys.